All right, welcome everyone. This is OP Radio. My name is Josh. I'm with Optimism. I've got Ryan today with us from CyberConnect. Really quick, just to kind of kick it off, we're going to have to give a disclaimer. We'll do this basically every time we run one of these sessions. But as speakers, we're presenting on in our own personal capacities and not for the respective companies that we work with. To the extent there are any, do not rely on any forward-looking statements made during this conversation in this episode. And just remember that OP is a governance token, not an investment, and nothing in this episode should be construed as investment advice. So that being said, formalities out of the way. Again, my name is Josh, and we'll be talking for the next half hour with Ryan, giving you guys kind of a high-level overview of what CyberConnect is, his background, what inevitably brought him to Optimism and the Superchain, and any closing thoughts that he has. So with that, Ryan, why don't you, obviously your background's kind of pretty extensive. Why don't you just kick it off, kind of who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll get going from there.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm co-founder at CyberConnect. CyberConnect started in 2021, trying to build social network on crypto where every users and every developers can have a fair say in that value distribution of the traditional social networks. And my personal background even before coming to Web3 was actually working at Instagram, working on a lot of other social networks, traditional on Web2. And CyberConnect has been building on providing that infrastructure for users to own their social identity, their social content, their social graph. And it was always a multi-chain approach that we work very closely with all the EVMs. And finally, we're getting very close to the Optimism team throughout the last year and a half. And we found that the best way to move forward for all the social applications on chain would be building an L2 specifically for social. And that's why CyberConnect is building Cyber, the L2, which we're super excited to talk about.
Nice, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that, but did your time with Web2 teams as a whole and with social teams kind of play a role in you thinking about what it would mean to actually decentralize social content?
Yeah, of course. So I've had multiple experiences with building traditional social networks at startups and at Instagram. I think Instagram was very interesting, where most of the revenue going from creators, like created by creators through either ads or whatever sponsorships, ended up just getting captured by Facebook. It was never really given back to the creators. They don't have the opportunity to own their audience. They couldn't really migrate whatever they have to a different platform. Everything is on the distribution of Facebook. And that's why when I started in Web3, I'm always looking into how is there any ways that users can own that data, especially the creators, and then if we can create a fair, a more transparent rules around how social networks work on chain, and then developers can have more freedom to build on top. Like, you don't really see people building on traditional social networks like API or data to build something unique, because that's always going to be taken away or have that risk of a platform risk, right? Like the decentralized platforms can just kick everyone out of the platform. Right. So I think actually before a little bit of background on before CyberConnect, we actually built another decentralized social network, which focused a lot more on content and creators, which is called DLive. It's a live streaming platform on Cosmos, and we worked with the largest YouTuber on the planet at the time, PewDiePie, to stream with us. We onboarded about 100,000 streamers and about 30 million users onto a chain that we built back in the day, which is a Cosmos chain. Because we had it's the same problem. If you want to build on the crypto rail, you got to figure out, especially for the consumer product where you are expecting millions of users, you always have to build almost always have to think from the ground up, where do that TPS fit in, or where do that storage fit in. But yeah, it's a totally different landscape now with the Optimism and with all the L2s.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, two quick questions. One, are there things you think from Instagram that you saw that did work very well that, these larger Web2 companies take in terms of, I know you mentioned ads and sponsorship, that you think are easily translatable into what you guys are trying to do in CyberConnect?
Right. I think one thing that's very interesting throughout our experience building on Web3 is how the payment rail is so much different versus what Instagram has. Like Instagram has great, like, or any traditional social networks have great payment rails, but those are really limited to like the existing payment network. Like the creators needs to take up to 60 days to wait for like credit cards and like donations payments to go through, and before they can actually withdraw anything to use in the real world. So that can be hugely improved with a lot of the crypto stuff that like the payments that we have, like with the stable coins, where everything gets settled in pretty much minutes. And then you get another part of it where the audience was really limited to what Instagram recommends, or like it's based on most of the creators are like having their audience coming from a single or couple geolocation rather than like from a global audience. Where, well, think about the payments issue coming across different countries, where most of the creators, let's say at the time, was really getting payments in US dollars, like donations from the US audience, but not the other way around. Like if you're coming from a third world country, you don't really get that audience from the US or from North America. And I think that was also very interesting to a problem to solve as a decentralized social network, where you get audience from everywhere of the world, and you get the same payments on the crypto rail, where like the stable coins and all these different tokens are available.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. I think we could talk about stables for hours in my mind, and how you're going to count the monetize, like the payment rails. Yeah, I'm excited for that part. So just really quickly to take a one quick step back, we kind of jumped into how CyberConnect is differing from legacy like Web2 projects, and you did mention that CyberConnect as a whole is it's meant to be a social layer. Can you just dig into a little bit more, maybe even ELI5 of what CyberConnect is? Because we've talked about it being a network, but if you were to hone in like more specifically on what you're trying to provide a deliverable for like users, what does that look like?
Right. So CyberConnect is a set of developer tooling around how users can own their social identity, their account, their name, their content, their social the distribution through their social graph, their followers. And it was designed to be, like, in the first place, was designed to be a set of smart contract plus like some off-chain storage to offer that user owning their social graph infrastructure to developers to build on top. And we've been building that for the last 2 years. We built one product specifically, which is called Link 3. So it's a first-party product that we built. It's a social network, especially for professionals and for projects to connect within the space. You can also visit it at link3.2 to take a look. But then, like, CyberConnect has been going through different iterations, and we finally felt that the best way to offer developer the experience that they can build social apps was to solve actually from the first step. Like, CyberConnect as a whole has consumed more than $3 million worth of gas, made like 20 million transactions on different chains, including Optimism, OP mainnet. And we've seen that as one of the biggest hurdle. And plus, users onboarding CyberConnect, about 70% of them are like first-time crypto users. Their first transaction was on CyberConnect, which means onboarding has been a very big pain point for them. And that also ties into why we want to build something like on the base layer before even coming to like what is a social network and what developers can build on top. We want to solve that easier onboarding and like a much lower gas, and together with like a bigger ecosystem that we can tap into. So that's kind of how we think about now versus like before, what we really just want to do like a social product. Now we want to make sure that there is a playground for developers to build social products on top, which is specifically designed for social.
Right, and making it easier and cheaper for users to actually work with everything but kind of Web3 via CyberConnect. That makes a lot of sense. So then you teed that up perfectly for the transition that I want to talk about in terms of like what drove you guys down a chain. So this is, as you said, it's not your first rodeo because you guys already worked kind of the Cosmos ecosystem. So when you guys were building, or when you were thinking about building a layer 2, What were kind of the important things that you were looking for? You mentioned gas fees, working on easier onboarding. Were there kind of more pieces that went into that puzzle, or was those kind of the main pain points?
Yeah, I think there are a couple, right? Onboarding is definitely the biggest because like we truly believe in that the next wave of developers and users will come in building non-financial use cases, and they're not going to just be here. Like users will, there are only going to be so many users that are really into trading, doing meme coin. Like there will be a much bigger audience out there who are interested in just great products, hang out with people, hang out with their friends. So onboarding onto crypto must be so much easier that not just the people, like the group of people who are looking for profits, can go through the hurdle. We've been working a lot on the account abstraction part throughout last year as well, where like on top of CyberConnect, we have a Cyber wallet, which is one of the biggest deployed account abstraction wallet, and we want to take that learning and put that into like a chain where most of the account abstraction stuff are natively supported, even to the point that users don't really need gas at all to get started. Other than that is where we want to help in general lower the gas fee. Like 4844 was great. A lot of this innovation has happened, but also if we want to touch like let's say billions of users, there must be more design space we have to consider on gas. And I think one more important thing is as we're going through the EVM, like EVM on top of L2s, I think EVM is definitely the best environment for developers to build. We came from building on Cosmos very early days, and we tried a lot of different ecosystems before. I think EVM is still the best developer platform, and then L2s on top of Ethereum is just makes so much more sense than whatever other EVM platform we're doing. And how can we make sure that we're not just wasting everybody's effort on building a siloed ecosystem or like a fragmented token economy? That's how we think about we want to be part of something that's bigger than just cyber, and developer and users can tap into resources, not just what we can offer on, like, let's say we can offer the best social experiences, but users still want to get into, let's say, NFTs on different platforms or want to get into payments. And there will be other chains that's more specifically designed for those. And I think Superchain as a way to kind of organize and to align everyone's interests and trying to have that rather than fighting for each other's share on this L2, but instead trying to grow the entire L2 to a much bigger ecosystem is what we are very attracted to.
Yeah. So it sounds like, the big thing was, as you guys were thinking of how you expand CyberConnect, you really wanted to make sure you were accounting for what seemed to be more infrastructure problems that you want to make it, again, on the cheaper, easier, and both the onboarding and the gas fees. But then on top of that, you did mention that the EVM is kind of a better developer platform. Can you talk through like what that means in terms of like your work with Solidity and how it compares, I guess, to other ecosystems?
Yeah, I think Solidity, well, I do come from an engineering background, so I did code a lot of different stuff throughout in different ecosystems. I think EVM just have, or like Solidity just have the easiest or like the simplest interface people can interact with. Some people would say it's like just not enough, or like it doesn't have all the features that they want, but also it still carries the most amount of financial transactions throughout crypto, and it is like kind of the focal point for developers where they don't really need to learn something else other than Solidity. And I think yeah, it's just and with especially with the L2s, you want like your token to be kind of coming from an L1 or coming from different L2, or you want your like users very familiar with that signature and what that C phrase is. So it's I think it's just like a lot of legacy or a lot of lendiness as well, like just because Ethereum has been around for so long, and then developer community are so strong around it. And for us, right, like we're building L2 especially for social use cases. We will want to tap into that. We want like, oh, let's not waste our time on building another VM, or we're not going to ask our developers to learn a different language if a lot of them are already building with the Solidity on EVMs. Right.
I'm gonna quick curveball and just on that developer part because I'm really curious. Like you had a Web 2 background, and then you got into Web 3. So just a hot take, not even hot take, but 15 seconds. If you were talking to any other like Web 2 developer that's thinking about like trying to get into the space for the first time, what do you think worked really well for you, and then what would you recommend them doing? And then obviously this helps understand like how they can come build with CyberConnect. But I'm just curious like what those would look like.
Wow, there are a lot of.
I apologize. I have this list of questions for you that were set, but I'm like, this conversations. I think there's great things to get your thoughts.
Yeah, this is great. So I think the first, well, if I understand your question correctly, is like, what do I tell another like Web2 friends that I have who's building, who's an engineer? And well, first of all, I think they got to go over the bias, like crypto is only for like scammers, which took me like probably a couple of years to get through that. And I think just the easiest pitch is like, if traditional platforms are taking 70% to 90% of revenue away in that value creation funnel, if you can just make that to 10% or like even less, everybody will benefit, especially in social networks, right? Like if Facebook is not taking 90% away, all the creators, there will be even more than like 2 million creators just created by sharing that revenue, redistributing that revenue. And then there will be more developers to build on top of a fairly regulated or like governed platform instead of just arbitrary centralized platform risk. Yeah, that's mostly how I tell my Web2 engineering friends.
Yeah, I do think that there's obviously we have this issue. Everyone that knows this in the space of this kind of misperception of what cryptocurrency is versus cryptography versus building on chain. But then, okay, the other quick thing, if you were to like reteach yourself Solidity for the first time from scratch, being a Web2 developer, like what resources were best for you or what would be ideal?
Well, there are a ton of tutorials. I remember seeing a couple of very good Solidity sites, and then a lot of I went through Crypto Zombie or something. Like there are a ton of tutorial from back in the days, and you can just go through, let's say, a lot of third parties that's working very closely with Optimism as well. Like I think their web and a lot of developer focusing platforms were doing really well on onboarding developers. I believe Optimisms have a list of good resources on its sites.
Yeah, that was definitely not an indirect shill. I'm just curious because I've got a ton of Web2 friends as well. And we talk about this quite a bit. So, okay, shifting gears back. So back to Superchain and CyberConnect and what you guys are thinking about. So when you're looking at kind of other ecosystems to build in, so now you've gravitated away from Cosmos, you're in the EVM, you're an EVM maxi. As you were thinking about where you guys wanted to go, how did you think of Optimism versus any of the other players in the space, with Arbitrum, Polygon, et cetera?
Well, I think, yeah, taking a step back, like how when we're approaching, like when we're designing CyberConnect as just a set of smart contract that lives on different EVMs, like there are a couple components to it, right? Like that we want better onboarding for developers, so that's how we're designing the account abstraction wallets. We're designing the social graph and how can we make it like efficient. So we actually just done that and just deployed on a lot of the different EVM chains and ended up, I think users really care about social stuff in this like Optimism and base. Like we've had most of the success with the on OP mainnet and with the base team building like account abstraction experiences, social experiences, and then like onboarding other developers to build on top of CyberConnect as a set of smart contract protocol. So that's kind of our way getting into more connected to the Superchain ecosystem. And we've seen that it's not just a chain for DeFi, or it's just not just like an ecosystem for DeFi or just for gaming, which I don't think we are part of either. So we're more like, oh, this is for mass adoption, this is for culture, and that ethos like line up with us a lot. And then on the technical side, OP stack is the stack that's mostly compatible to the original Ethereum, right? It took OP mainnet the shortest amount of time to upgrade to 4844. I think that just kind of says something with the compatibility, and we can see a much easier future proof going down with Ethereum doing more upgrades, and then I would assume like the entire OP stack will benefit from that as well. And versus some other chain or like Stacks, or we mostly thought about how can we be contributing to something bigger. I kind of think I have other teams that I work pretty closely with, friends that are building L2s and are picking different chains or stacks. But like for us, we believe we're building into something bigger. Like we're not just trying to create another L1 or another L2. Like, right, if you're not building in a collective, you are just building another blockchain. And it's more like the strategy wise will be different. The way you look at things will be different. It's more like aggressive, like versus a collaborative. That's what I think, and that plays a huge role for us. Like we would want to still collaborate with the OP mainnet, with Base, with other superchain L2, so that what the users can flow from different chains eventually, and now users have like this collective, like attract like the entire L2 on superchain have like this collective attractiveness to users. Like it's not just, oh, we're fighting for that market share. So
yeah, I think that you nailed it in terms of the way that I really, obviously financial use cases are incredibly important for layer twos. Locking in TVL and having sustained financial traction is very important. But I completely agree. Like the idea of strictly focusing on finance, that's something that at Optimism, when we think of, we're trying to decentralize the internet. How do you build basically all these different verticals that come into the space in terms of finance, like infrastructure more broadly, NFTs, gaming, social, like DPIN. So I think, I think you nailed everything that reflects Optimism, which is great to hear it. And then I also agree, like this collective, because it's very clear that the way we build the super chain in the long term is definitely through the combined efforts of everyone, as opposed to one individual actor trying to make a ton of decisions. Cool. We don't have a ton of time left, but I did want to ask you, like, if teams are thinking about building on CyberConnect, one, if you can just cover timelines, high level with CyberConnect, and then two, if developers are thinking about building on top of CyberConnect, what you would recommend, they start to think about and how they can start to get involved with your team.
Right. So the timeline, our testnet was out last week. We just announced our L2 2 weeks ago, so we're super excited to really kick this off. The mainnet for Cyber L2 is looking down probably in a month. And if any developers are interested in building social experiences with cheaper gas fee, with native account abstraction, or like more account tracking support, Cyber is the place to build. And you can always find us on Twitter, where we're at CyberConnect HQ. And also, we're part of Superchain, so anything, like any developer building on top will also benefit from the Superchain's rewards, incentives, and also leveraging other ecosystems users as well. Right, CyberConnect, again, like Cyber L2 is really aiming for getting the social network, social media kind of applications on top with cheaper gas and easier onboarding through account abstraction, passkey. And we believe that's where we onboard a lot of users through social experiences and bring them into the on-chain economy powered by Superchain in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pumped. Dare to ask, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you directly if they're interested in joining, or should they go to CyberConnect?
Oh yeah, please, find me at RyanLee_me on Telegram and on Twitter. So you can always DM me about anything you want to learn about cyber, you want to learn what's our roadmap, or if you just want to build and see if there's any support from our side. We're always working with developers very closely on that.
Love it. Cool. Well, Ryan, I think we have to wrap, but I wanted to say thanks for jumping in. I know you're off for a flight and I've got a busy day ahead of you, but I appreciate you making time in between. And we're excited to have, obviously, CyberConnect as part of the super chain. Excited for what it's going to mean for growing social. And everyone stay tuned on what they're going to keep building.
Thanks, Josh.
Cool. Thanks, sir.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.